In World War II, weapons were life or death companions. But sometimes, soldiers faced incredibly treacherous friends. From absurd design flaws to suicidal mechanisms, here are 25 of the most hated weapons in history. Let's see just how terrible they were. At the top of the list is the Nambu Type 94. Besides its unusually small stock, it has a fatal design flaw. The drive shaft is completely exposed. Accidental friction or forceful handling will cause it to fire automatically, even with the safety engaged. A weapon that shoots its owner in the leg more often than its enemy. The Ross rifle was a champion on the shooting range, but a disaster in muddy trenches. Its bolt mechanism was so sensitive, it would jam with just a little mud. Worst of all, if you assembled it incorrectly, pulling the trigger would send the entire bolt assembly flying straight into your face with lethal force. Despite its sleek appearance, the Type 14 suffered from extremely poor build quality. The most classic flaw was the brittle firing pin, which broke easily even during test firing. Soldiers always had to carry spare firing pins if they didn't want to turn their rifle into a pile of scrap metal under fire. Italian soldiers truly hated the Carcano M38 because of its weak ammunition, extremely short range, and appalling accuracy. Its fixed sights turned long-range aiming into a game of chance. Holding this rifle, the soldier felt completely outmatched by the superior firepower of the Allies. Stamped from cheap steel, this gun only fires a single bullet. But the nightmare lies in reloading. After firing, you have to use a wooden stick to poke into the barrel to remove the spent cartridge before you can reload. Reloading takes longer than the time your enemy has to point a gun at you. This machine gun had an extremely bizarre mechanism. It required a continuous pumping of lubricating oil to keep the ammunition running. But in the desert battlefield, the oil mixed with the sand to form a perfectly abrasive mud, causing the gun to jam after only a few rounds. Italian soldiers preferred to pick up discarded enemy weapons rather than risk their lives fighting it. Dubbed the worst machine gun in history, the Scioscia had an incredibly silly, open, semicircular magazine design. Mud, dirt, and dust easily got inside, jamming the gun instantly. The barrel overheated frequently, and the recoil was so strong that you couldn't hit a target even if it was right in front of you. Constructed from hollow steel water pipes, the Sten Mk2 is famously nicknamed the Death Tap. Its safety catch is so loose that if accidentally dropped, the gun will fire automatically, unleashing all 32 bullets on anyone unlucky enough to be nearby, including your own comrades. The Type 11 doesn't use magazines. Instead, it employs an open funnel on the side to drop individual rounds into the chamber. This mechanism is extremely sensitive to dusty environments. Even a slight gust of wind can cause dust and sand to settle, immediately disrupting the system. Furthermore, the rifle is bulky and almost impossible to repair quickly during combat. Although accurate in firing, the Riesing M50's internal mechanism was too delicate and fragile. When brought to the tropical environment of the Pacific, mud, saltwater, and rust quickly turned it into a piece of scrap metal. The gun constantly jammed in critical situations, causing the Marines to discard it without hesitation. The disastrous idea was called the sticky bomb. It was coated with superglue to attach to tanks, but tanks were often covered in mud, causing the bombs to slip off. Instead, the glue stuck to the soldiers' clothing. Countless tragedies occurred when soldiers pulled the pin only to find the bomb stuck to their hand, making it impossible to throw. Piat doesn't use propellant, but instead uses a giant spring to propel the projectile. To load it, you have to twist your back and pull with a force of up to 90 kilograms. Many people have broken their shoulder bones trying to fire it. The effective range is only 50 meters, forcing you to rush right up to the front of an enemy tank, an act that's tantamount to suicide. Weighing in at 16 kilograms, carrying this rifle during marches was torture. Its recoil was incredibly strong, capable of breaking the shooter's collarbone if the shoulder support wasn't properly positioned. Despite the pain, its bullets were merely a tickle against the thick steel of the latest German panzer tanks. This expensive, triple-barreled survival rifle was assigned to German pilots. The problem was that it used two different types of ammunition: buckshot and rifle rounds. In the midst of a life-or-death war, fleeing from the enemy, finding enough ammunition for it was impossible. The rifle looked luxurious, but was utterly impractical. The desperate idea trained bomb-carrying dogs to crawl under enemy tanks, but in reality, the dogs panicked at the sound of the artillery. Instead of charging towards the German tanks, they ran straight back to their own trenches, inadvertently triggering the detonators on their backs, turning them into suicide bombs that slaughtered their own comrades. The Type 97 grenade has an extreme detonation method. After pulling the pin, you have to forcefully hit the grenade cap against a hard object like a shoe sole or helmet before throwing it. This is both time-consuming and easy to slip from your hand, causing it to explode right in your hand. Not to mention, its fuse is extremely ineffective. Out of 10 grenades, half will misfire. The Breda grenade was famous not for its power, but for its record-breakingly high miss rate. Its impact mechanism was so terrible that when thrown, many would fall to the ground and lie dormant. This battlefield, littered with unexploded grenades, inadvertently became a deadly minefield, trapping even their own soldiers. Possessing devastating destructive power, but its use was suicidal. You couldn't throw it. German soldiers had to run through machine gun fire, approach the enemy tank, manually attach the mine with magnets, pull the pin, and escape. A life-or-death mission with a survival rate of only a percentage. A crazy invention. Two giant wheels packed with explosives, propelled by rockets. It was expected to thunder through enemy lines. But in reality, the rockets burned unevenly, causing the machine to constantly lose control, spin 180 degrees, and chase after the very same Allied generals watching the test from behind. While a terror to the Allies, the Tiger was a liability for German maintenance crews. Its layered interlocking track system was a nightmare. If an inner wheel broke or got stuck in mud, the crew had to painstakingly dismantle all 5 or 6 bulky outer wheels under intense artillery fire. The 37mm cannon had good firepower, but its rate of fire was far too slow compared to the speed of Allied fighters. The gun was extremely cumbersome to maneuver, and the manual loading mechanism was prone to jamming, turning the entire gun crew on the ground into live targets for the flying aircraft. The Breda machine gun made things difficult for itself by using a horizontal hard-loading magazine. Most bizarrely, after firing instead of ejecting the spent cartridges, the gun automatically pushed the empty cartridges back into the magazine. This cumbersome mechanism made the gun extremely heavy, its rate of fire incredibly slow, and it would jam if it encountered even a little sand, preventing it from firing. Carrying a flamethrower means you're a sniper's #1 target. The fuel tank weighs over 30 kilograms, making the soldier move slowly. Most terrifyingly, if an incendiary bullet penetrates the pressure tank on their back, the soldier will instantly become a living torch, burning fiercely on the battlefield. The K-class submarines were a disaster because they ran on steam engines. To dive, the crew had to extinguish the boiler fire and fold down the covers of the 2 enormous smokestacks, which took more than 5 minutes. Their snail-like diving speed made them easy to shoot down. In fact, none of them were ever sunk by the enemy. They all sank themselves due to technical failures. This anti-tank gun was extremely complex, long, cumbersome, and inconvenient. Soldiers had to drag it around in trenches with great difficulty. Worse still, when Allied tanks upgraded their armor to thicker layers, the small bullets from this gun would ricochet off the steel plating like pebbles, rendering them completely useless. In war, the line between life and death sometimes lies on a single spring or a metal rod. These weapons are a painful lesson about how design flaws can cost lives. Which weapon do you think is the most treacherous? Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to discover more historical mysteries.